wonderful day in Union Square Park. Today, Wednesday, 26 May 2021. I'm here with brother Tarik Haskins, who's been an activist for a good long time in a number of very important causes involving community organization and much else. He grew up was born in Virginia, Norfolk, Virginia, and then lived,
I moved to Gary, Indiana.
Gary, Indiana.
And then I moved back to Norfolk and then moved to New York in '62.
Okay. And so you settled there in '62.
That's right.
All right. We're just going to have to speak a little louder because we have a wonderful jazz quartet playing out there, outside the perimeter, inside the park, really. It's good having you here today for this edition of New Millennium Oral History Archives in the World, Brother Tarik. So you mentioned that you grew up in Virginia. What was the difference you found coming up, where you went from the South to the Midwest, Gary, Indiana, and then back to the South, and then finally here in the Northeast?
Yeah.
In a naked city, Gotham City, New York City.
Right.
How did you find the differences?
Well, Norfolk I was in a segregated black community, and my relatives lived with my, relatives and close friends, So when I left Norfolk and came to New York, I was like in an environment where it was just a lot of people who I didn't know.
Right.
And so that was the difference. Whereas Norfolk was totally black, when I moved to New York, the persons here were black, white, and Spanish in '62.
So you got here in '62.
Yeah.
And then you had finished. By that time, you had finished elementary school. You finished the 8th grade, and you were in high school. You were in high school when you.
I finished the 6th grade. I went to the 7th grade here.
Right.
Yeah, in New York. 7, 8, and 9.
And that was your family settled in Brooklyn?
Yes.
Right. And then you went on to automotive high school.
That's right.
Where you learned
how to fix cars, trucks, buses.
They also had things with airplanes.
Well, they had aviation high school.
That's right. That was a separate school, right?
Right, that's right.
Now, do those two trade schools are so important.
Yeah.
Are those two trade schools still around?
I don't know, right now.
I remember I had friends who went there, school there in the 70s.
Yeah.
Both automotive and aviation.
Right.
Were they both in Brooklyn? One was in Brooklyn. Automotive was in Brooklyn.
Right.
Aviation was in Queens or Brooklyn?
Queens.
In Queens. Aviation was, right?
That's right.
So you did that stint.
Yeah.
And you got active in some other activities. Anything you want to talk about? I mean, it's a really interesting experience growing up in Brooklyn.
Right, it was.
In the 60s.
That's right.
Right through the mid to late 60s.
That's right. In the mid to late 60s, New York reminded me of Coney Island in terms of the amount of people that were on the street. It was like no one was inside. Everyone was outside on the street. It reminded you of the 1930s when you see those movies, how the streets was crowded. It was still crowded like that. So when I see Brooklyn, New York now, no one is on the street, so.
It's a whole different thing because of gentrification and so-called, redevelopment, so-called urban renewal.
That's right.
Which, the phrase for that, as you know, in the 60s, late 60s, 70s, they called it Negro removal.
Right, that's right.
So those neighborhoods, a lot of them are not so much family. You see the amount of, there's still a black and brown communities there, but a lot of new people are coming and taking over.
That's right,
the housing stock and developers have moved in all over the city, not just in Brooklyn.
Yes.
Right. So from high school, secondary school, you decided to join the armed forces. You became a Marine during the heat of the Vietnam War.
Right.
So you went in March of '68.
April. I joined in March. Right.
You joined in March, and then you were in the war theater in April. You were in Vietnam in April.
No, I joined in March, and I had a month to get my affairs together, and so that meant I went in actually physically in April, and I was a jet engine mechanic in the military, and I went to training and all of that, and actually I was what they call stateside for the first couple of years And then the person in charge of the Marine Corps said that whoever hadn't been to Vietnam would be gone, and that meant me. That hit me right away, so I went.
So that means in 70, late 70.
No, early 70.
Early 70.
Yeah, I arrived in Vietnam on Mother's Day, 1970. So yeah.
That was May of 1970
Yeah.
on Mother's Day. And you were in Vietnam until 73.
No, 71. Yeah,
Okay,
only
right.
9 months.
But you did just two, you always have it. You said 2 years, 9 months, and how many days?
8 days.
8 days were you in the
So
armed
the 9
forces.
months and 8 days was in Vietnam.
By 71, you were out.
That's right.
Right, let's back up a little. And so we can do a bit of a, check the chronology here. So in high school, unbeknownst to me, because we've talked many times, you said you joined the street tribe, or
Right, that's
street
right.
gang, as more commonly
That's right.
known. And they weren't one of the more political gangs like the Black Spades.
No.
Right.
They were a pure street organization, and we engaged in a lot of negative activity in terms of fighting other groups, other
And not
street
upbuilding of the
organizations.
community and so on.
No, that's right. So that's why I appreciated having survived Vietnam and appreciated the opportunity to join the Black Panthers and to join the Black Liberation Army to do something physically positive, in view of my background.
Right. Well, you certainly made up for it.
That's right.
Yeah,
That was the
absolutely.
intent.
And you told me a little sideline, very interesting. You mentioned a little story there that Herman Ferguson, who was this great community activist,
That's right.
and certainly an elder to you
That's right.
and to all of us,
Yeah.
he had spoken to your warlord
That's
of
right.
your gang
That's right.
in the late 60s
That's right.
about, well,
About
before
60,
67,
yeah.
around 67, 66.
About 67, 66, yeah. 66.
Yeah, about
About
these
the
sort of
gangs.
negative activities,
Yeah, the gangs fighting and killing each other off.
rather
And
than
he-
organizing
Yeah.
and getting involved in community
Right. He
service.
suggested that we should stop doing that. And I believe that really was the death knell for the gang, because after that we stopped,
Is that right?
Yeah, because the person who was a warlord was a very intelligent guy, and so he explained that to us. And at the time, I was not as savvy as I am
conscious,
now. And I had said that, who the hell is Herman Ferguson, And then I told Herman about that later on, that
You
was,
must have had a chuckle.
yeah,
Yes.
so that was very good that he had intervened in our lives and stopped our gang.
He's now with the ancestors.
That's right.
He's since passed on.
That's right.
Yes, very, very important figure, active in a lot of school issues and program
That's right.
education issues, community, centering on community
That's right.
concerns and much else. So was that the spark for you in terms of a level of consciousness raising?
No,
As you were?
the spark for me was the shock of being discriminated against. I give you an example. I was really going to be a helicopter pilot.
Are
And
you talking about before Vietnam or
No.
during Vietnam?
when I joined the service, I was going to be a helicopter pilot. And I went through the flying school part, and I got the highest grade at the end of that thing, and then you go out and fly and all that. But the guy promoted everybody but me. So that was one of the discriminatory things that I went against. Of course, people, when I was in class, I heard the N-word being kicked about. So
Now you're talking about in the training before.
yeah, in
you
the
got-
class,
Yeah,
before I
before.
went to Vietnam, in the class.
And where was the training taking place?
Memphis, Tennessee.
Deep South. Yeah. So you were there in training. So
Yeah.
you left New York and were sent by the Marines to train in Memphis, Tennessee.
Right. I had to learn about one engine in Memphis, Tennessee. Well, after that thing of not being promoted, I decided to work on engines, jet engines. And so I learned one jet engine in Memphis, Tennessee. I learned the other jet engine in Jacksonville, Florida. But it was those discriminatory experiences, hearing the N-word being kicked around. that
Hateful
yeah,
experiences.
That's right. That inclined me to study our situation and involve myself in the struggle for positive change in black people.
And you joined the Marines just before Martin's assassination.
Just before, yeah.
You joined March of 68.
Right.
And then, how was it when you said you had some afterthoughts about joining after you joined?
Well, joined, and I had a month to get my affairs together, and King was killed, but I still decided to go in. You know, I didn't fully appreciate what had happened. You know, I wasn't that informed about our situation that I had appropriate appreciation for King being killed. So I still went in the military.
And by that time, King had come out against the Vietnam War a
That's
year
right.
to the day,
That's
exactly
right.
when he was assassinated.
That's right.
He came out against that war in a speech at Riverside Church
That's
for
right.
April '67.
That's right.
And he was assassinated exactly a day to the year after that speech.
Yeah.
And so King had already turned against the war. He had
Yeah.
turned against the war before even that speech in '67.
Right, that's right.
Right? Did people talk to you about joining? Were there any sort of conscious people that reach out to you
Well, I was.
about your plans to join the Marines?
No, I didn't discuss that with no one. So I went on and did that. But it did have a.
And you were old enough, you didn't need your parents'
That's right.
signature to join.
That's right. So, but it did impact black people in the service because a lot of black people chose to get out of the service at that time, and it was such a bad situation for them. They had to launch a specific effort to try to recruit black people because so many black people had decided to leave the service as a result of King being killed.
Right. No, I just want to get to that, just to sort of follow your trajectory, your path,
Right.
as it were, from a kind of situation where things weren't thought through in your mind necessarily, or you didn't see certain things, and to a level of consciousness.
That's
Very interesting.
Right.
Because that path took you after Vietnam, after leaving the Army, Marines, to immediately to the Black Panther Party
That's right.
in '71, to the Black Liberation Army in the
Right.
'70s,
Right.
which was a revolutionary group that today would have been pegged as any number of things today. But they were doing what they felt were very conscious things to help liberate or bring about a sort of revolution.
So when I was in the military being discriminated against, I was hearing about the Black Panther Party, watching them on the news, and I had decided that once I got out, I would join the Black Panther Party. And so I did once I got out.
And of course, there was a consciousness among black and brown soldiers there in Vietnam. Yeah. I mean,
This is a unity band from Vietnam.
wow. Let's see it. And you wear it all. You wear it all the
Right.
time. So, and you knew a lot of soldiers, obviously, a lot of black and brown soldiers from from the inner cities who were there.
Yeah.
I forget his name, Macmillan. Terry Macmillan, maybe his name is. I don't remember. He wrote a book, Soulville, and he referred to the front lines
Okay.
in that war theater in Vietnam, the American war theater. The front lines were made up of largely, poor whites,
Yeah. And black. Yeah.
blacks, Hispanics,
Yeah.
and others. Did you actually saw? You were an airplane, helicopter mechanic,
No, I was jetting.
jet engine mechanic, right? And you saw action as well while you were there.
Right. So when I went to my shop supervisor said he already has one in person who was
The N-word, yeah.
one in person in his shop. He told the white guys that, and he's not having two, so he put me out on the line. So that's how I was sort of seeing action.
Right. So that's how you wound up seeing action. Is there anything you want to share with what you saw there while a soldier in Vietnam?
Oh, I was in a couple of shootouts, and pretty much a couple of shootouts. And fortunately, I didn't get hurt. I made it back. But that was largely due to a person saying that he had one person in and he put me out in the field, so I was able to survive that, but fortunately.
You got some wonderful music in the background, so we just have to keep our volume up. I know
Right.
you got a great speaking voice, so
Okay.
we want to make sure that everyone listening can hear you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what when you left, what were the conditions under which you left the war in '71, Vietnam? Left Vietnam. Anything you want to talk about or say?
Well, there were a lot of actions going on the base, fighting between the races, whites and blacks, and the races also fought against the hippies. So the blacks and the hippies fought against the races. So we had
and there were hippies that were obviously, in Vietnam as well.
Yeah.
Soldiers.
That's right.
That had a hippie sensibility.
That's right.
And they were opposed to, of course, the racism they saw in the Army, the Marines, and then they were progressive in their forward in their thinking.
So we fought races, and so I got known for being a fighter against the races. I had a number of fights with them.
When you say the fighting, just so that people know, you're talking about physical fights, nothing with weapons.
Oh yeah, weapons, knives, guns.
Because that's a little known.
Yeah.
We hear about it. We've seen some of the historical stuff that's come out about the tensions between the races there, but you don't really hear it.
Right.
It's not really dealt with. You know. So can you tell us what people killed?
I'm sure they would.
A lot of that friendly fire wasn't so friendly.
Well, yeah, that's right.
It's always been.
Yeah. As a matter of fact, I arrived at a shootout one day, and the sergeant told everybody to go that way and told me to go that way because he was going to kill me. But I said I knew how they were. I said, 1 minute. I loaded my gun up and let him know I'm going to stay right here. And the shootout was going on, but I said I'm going to stay right here because I know he was going to kill me. And so when I got arrested for that, the officers that handled the case, they told me, you and Bob had a little problem, you know, so I'm going to charge you with disorderly conduct, give me $30 or something like that. But because they didn't charge me with really going to kill this guy because the government was down with it. So that's why they charged me with it. They didn't want to have a big, long discussion about that because they were down with it. That's how they go.
I mean, you could easily imagine that anybody in their right mind, I mean, given the level of, you know, demonic racism that existed here, and it was only transferred over there. It's just unimaginable sometimes, though, when you think that people are there to fight a so-called enemy, that they would turn on each other, and as people did it, you know, when they had, you know, you're talking about 58,000 plus dead from the U.S. side, and about probably 2.3 million Vietnamese that were killed.
That's right.
By the time that war ended, officially, you know, April 30th, 1975 is the official date, even though the shooting war had ended 2 years before in '73. Yeah, interesting.
Yeah.
So now, what was your status when you came back from the Marines?
My status was when I came back from the Marines, I had got discharged because of an incident. A white guy had called a black guy N-word, and so a number of us went to these white guys and discussed that with them and let them know that's not a good thing to do, and it shouldn't be repeated. It's going to be a very bad experience for all of y'all. So that's how they picked me out. They said I was the leader of that, taking all these black guys down and surrounding me 6 white guys. And so they said you was the one responsible for that and for a lot of other things.
They charged you with being a ringleader.
Right. And so actually they charged me with 6 assaults because they said that assault is when you make a person cringe or something. That's assault.
Was there a military trial?
No, that's why. They gave me a choice. They said you could go to trial for these 6 assaults, or you can choose to get out of the military on an honorable condition. So I chose to get out.
On a what condition?
Honorable discharge.
So you got an honorable discharge.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Right.
So I see. So you qualified for the benefits of a veteran.
Yeah, I got all that.
Oh, okay, good. Yeah, because when you told me that off camera, I didn't understand.
Right.
That's excellent. So you were able to get out probably earlier.
Yeah, instead of 4 years, I got out in 2 years, 9 months, and 8 days. That's right.
Okay. And then when you came back to New York from Vietnam.
That's right. And I came back, and I had said that while I was in the military, that I was going to join the Black Panthers. As soon as I find them, and I went looking for them, and they were in my pool room that I had to hang out in. They had opened an office
in Brooklyn.
Yeah, they had opened an office in the pool room there. So I I went there and I joined them.
You joined them. That was
Yeah.
71.
Yeah. And when I joined them, the police helicopter pulled up in the middle of the street, and the guy got out on the rail and took our picture. And I was knocking,
Surveilling the
as I
place.
was knocking on the door.
Wow. Wow. Now, can you tell us some of the activities? Black Panther Party had very forward-thinking programs they were able to implement. Early sickle cell anemia testing, the early breakfast program before young children went to school so they're not hungry, so they can be attentive and learn, and other things around housing issues. Is there anything you want to talk about
Right, well,
with your time with the Panthers?
Yeah, I like the Panthers because the Panthers were addressing all the needs of black people, you know. They was addressing the health needs. The sickle cell anemia was one of the health issues that they were addressing.
Early sickle cell anemia
That's
testing,
right. That's right.
detection, yeah.
Yeah, and that was not a particular concern for the government, so it was a particular concern for the Black Panthers. But that was just one of the issues. They had persons dealing with other health issues. Also, they had the clothing thing, they had the help for seniors.
Providing clothing for
Right.
people who were unclothed or
That's right.
had very little clothing, particularly during the winter and the other months.
And I like to think that foreign governments considered the Black Panthers really the government of black people, and they didn't acknowledge these congressmen and all that sort of stuff. They considered the Black Panthers as that.
Panthers really function as a kind of non-governmental, an NGO,
Right.
non-governmental organization,
Right. Well,
doing a lot of the work that municipal, state, and federal government
Right.
sort of, was negligent on.
Yeah.
So 'cause there was a consciousness there.
So and the Black Panthers had a school for the children.
The after-school program, right?
Well, after school and a full school thing in the summertime. So that was
Kind of day camp,
Yeah, right. Not a day camp.
not a day camp.
No, but a full
Summer school.
Yeah, summer
Right.
school. Yeah.
Okay. Uh-huh.
Yeah.
What were you involved with the Panthers?
Well, I was only involved with like selling the papers. Really, I attended some of the functions that they had, special functions because I was going to college at the same time.
Oh, you were?
Yeah,
When you came back from
Yeah, I
Vietnam?
was going to college.
So when you came back, you were about, in 71, what, like 24, 25?
Somewhere around there.
Yeah, and then you went back to, you went to, that's when you went to Medgar Evers for
Right,
2
that's
years.
right, yeah.
You did 2 years there
Right.
while you were with the Panthers.
Right. That's right.
Okay.
So that's why I was able to fully participate in all the programs
Right.
because I was going to school in the daytime and working at night.
And Medgar Evers College in Brooklyn, still there, of course, was newly founded.
That's
wasn't it?
right. It was newly founded, and Sonny Carson and them was able to play a principal role in selecting the name Medgar Evers for the college, the new Brooklyn College. And they wanted a college in the black community, serving black people, and a group of persons. Some of them I knew, Sonny Carson, Big Black, Les Campbell, Al Van, and them. They chose the name Medgar Evers, and they registered me for college. Al Van registered me for college, and Big
Al
Black.
Van later became a state senator
That's
here in
right.
New York.
Yeah.
Big Black was part of the Attica uprising.
Well, no, Big Black was Les Campbell. He was a school principal.
Oh, another Big
Yeah,
Black.
he became a school principal. I think both of them at the time were school teachers, and they had a black teachers association.
You mean Al Van and Big Black? That's the
Right.
other Big Black. There's another Big Black
I
who
know
was part of
from-
Attica.
That's right. That's
And
right.
he later was involved with the legal reforms after that Attica
Right.
uprising, when so many people were killed in 71.
Yeah.
And then Sonny Carson, of course, there was a film made about Sonny Carson
That's
in the
right.
early 70s,
That's
The
right.
Education of Sonny Carson.
That's right.
And Sonny came out of just trying to just sort of frame, give everybody an autobiographical sketch so that people listening can know what these figures are that you're mentioning. And Sonny Carson came out of the street
Yeah.
tribe, street
Right.
organization, gang,
Yeah.
and got politicized.
That's right.
Right.
He was a bishop, and he went
The
in
bishop is the
again
the gang.
street organization. Yeah.
Right.
And he went in the military, and he was a special forces, airborne special forces. He got shot. When he got shot, the people, the North Koreans, were telling him, "Black man, your struggle is not."
You mean the
here."
North Vietnamese?
Yeah. North Korea.
Was he? Well,
He was in Korea.
oh, he was in the Korean War.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so he's older than you. Yeah, he was in the Korean War. That That was 53, 50
Right.
to 53.
Yeah.
So was he captured by the North Koreans?
No, he wasn't. But he was wounded, and they were telling him that black man, your struggle is really in America. So yeah, so
Did he get politicized then?
that was a significant
So
change.
the gangs, his involvement with the gangs, I thought it came later.
No, the gangs was first. The gangs
Gang
when he
with
was young.
Seymour was first, yeah.
Yeah.
And then he went to Korea. He joined
Yeah,
the Korean.
that's right. That's right.
Was he drafted or?
I think he might have gone.
This is Sonny Carson. Wow, very interesting. And very important film that was made about his life.
Right.
The education of Sonny Carson.
Yeah.
Yeah. Then he later became,
Yeah.
community organizing extraordinaire.
That's right. And he
in
was
Brooklyn.
Yeah, he was in charge of Brooklyn Poor, and he played a significant role in the community control schools dealing with the Brownsville
Right.
issue.
That's right. The Brownsville, Oceanville, Brownsville
That's right.
school.
Him and Herman Ferguson. Herman Ferguson was a assistant principal at the time, and he was a significant player in that struggle.
Right. There were several people involved with that.
That's
Lots of
right.
people involved with that. So Sonny Carson helped get you into.
What? Al Van and his brother Les Count, his name is Big Black. Yeah, so they registered me for Mega Evans. And like I said, I didn't participate in all the things with the Black Panthers that I wanted to because of my going to school and working at the same time.
Right.
So that's right.
And you were at Medgar for 2 years.
Right.
You were there for 2 years. All at the same time being involved with the Panthers.
That's right.
Now let me ask you, because this gives a lot of knowledge to people when you look back at the activism that comes out of the 60s and going into the early 70s, particularly in the African American community, the black community. While involved with the Panthers, you got involved with BLOC,
Right.
BLA, Black Liberation Army, which was an armed political outfit
Right.
that was made up of a number of very conscious black activists. And they came from a number of different groups, probably out of Pan-Africanist tradition, out of the Panthers, and still other movements, right?
Yes, sir.
BLOC was founded or created when, in the early 70s or late 60s? It was early 70s, was it not?
Probably might have been the late 60s. But I'm not sure because I wasn't there for the founding, but I'm thinking it might have been the late 60s, early 70s.
And it was made up overwhelmingly, if not nearly completely, of blacks. You had some whites.
Oh,
Yeah.
no
You
whites,
collaborate
no
with-
whites. But it was a coalition, joint efforts, but
You with the Weather Underground? Did you
the
all
Weather
collaborate?
Underground participated in a move that the Black Liberation Army was a part of the move. I can think of the Brinks action
Brinks,
was,
Brinks robbery,
was
early 70s.
it was a joint action between Black Liberation Army and the Weather Underground. So, but they worked together on some issues, and but they weren't. The Weather Underground was not incorporated into the Black
Absolutely.
Liberation Army.
Right. Yeah, clearly that was not the case. Well, how long would you say BLOC, Black Liberation Army, lasted?
Well, let's say the 80s or something like that.
19 to 1980.
Yeah, something like that.
So about roughly a decade, just a little more than a decade. Because BLOC was also involved in getting bringing Shakur out of jail.
That was in 79.
Yeah, that was 78, 79. Okay.
Yeah, they participated in that.
So you really had to go underground while being pursued by city, state, federal, a number of state policing authorities, right?
That's right.
Would you say the membership was small or large? Was it?
Well,
I mean, again, only what you want to talk about.
let's say it was small.
Was it primarily New York centered?
Well, it was in different
growing up here in the States. In the South, you have experience as a child in the Midwest, and here in the Northeast, in the belly of the beast, in New York City and Brooklyn, Republic of Brooklyn, as we often refer to it as, and then back to the South. You're training in the Marines, in basic training in Memphis before you headed to Vietnam. What was the impetus with getting involved and knowing that you were going to be surveilled back then? 45 years, 47 years ago, 48 years ago.
Well, I knew I was under
I mean, it's a
surveillance.
big risk.
Yeah, I knew it was a big risk, but
Right.
also the fact that black people were being disrespected, we're being held captured, and we're being forced to not say anything about how we're being disrespected, how we're being forced to live in the situation that we're living in. And so I chose to be a part of breaking that up, that you can't even talk, that, that they are holding black people hostage and making money off of us, and they're stacking up money off of us because of
Through the
paying
prison
us.
industrial complex and much else.
Well, just the general society, because they pay us such low salaries that even though black people work 5 days a week, they still have to get food stamps, so
Enormous
yeah.
income inequality.
So they just giving you the money to pay your bills, and you don't even have money to buy food. That's like slavery. That's the situation that we are living under, and they don't want us to say anything about that. They don't want us to protest against that, and so I wanted to fight to break that up. To break that.
A white journalist, an activist, professor, has called it a neo-feudal system that we've entered the last number of years in these United States, with the heart being eaten out of the inner cities, jobs disappearing, companies are gone, the wages are low. You can look at Camden, you can look at Patterson, you can look at a host of communities across the country. Not just black and Hispanics are impacted, but of course low-income whites too. You see this, how do you see this, us as a society going forward of trying to ameliorate, trying to improve?
I know.
If you see that being improved.
I know that's what the heart of the urban areas has been eviscerated, as you say, economically, and white people are learning that the white ruling class, they only care about money because they have taken their industrial sites out of the United States and located them in overseas areas, India and Bangladesh and places like that.
In pursuit of the lowest, low-wage workers.
That's right. And
China's not low enough anymore. India's no longer. Now they're in Bangladesh.
That's right.
And still looking for.
And the thing is, they were paying workers $30 an hour. They paying them 30 cents an hour overseas. They pursuing that dollar. But by them moving out all these jobs, really, the American worker don't have enough money to buy their product. You see, because the American worker that used to make $30 an hour, they making $8 an hour now in Burger King. And so they losing their houses.
Or $10 or $11 or even 15. It's still not enough.
They losing their cars. And that's the situation. So we got to know that in this type of environment, the best way to go is a collective way. Everybody has to pool their monies and resources, and we have to collectively own things. And what we did, we have to distribute it amongst those of us who are needed. That is the way to go, because if we don't go that way, everyone is going to be fighting and killing each other. That's not the way to live.
It's over chump change. So, Brother Tarik, as we near the end of this edition of New Millennium War History in the New Millennium War History Archives in the World, I know you and I talked off camera, and we wanted you to talk about the impact of your involvement in the Black Liberation Army. You wound up serving a number of years. Whatever it is you want to say about that in length of time, you consider yourself a political prisoner.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so
we made that clear when we went to court. As soon as we were arrested, we said that my comrade Ashanti got up and said that we all had on uniform, and by that, us being uniform, that was indicative of us being on the military force, and we were
And that was in 1974. I'm sorry, I just want to get the time. Yeah.
1974.
And you Black Blah had a uniform.
That's right.
Right. Black Liberation Army had a uniform.
So we were dressed in uniform when we were arrested. So that's what we were saying. We were in uniform, and therefore we should be regarded as political prisoners. You know, and so they did regard us as political prisoners. They didn't want to acknowledge it openly, but they did. You know, so I got special treatment when I went to jail. You know,
because you were seen, and you were seen by the community and others as a political prisoner.
That's right.
And by the way, we still have political prisoners in there.
Right. That's right. That's right.
There are what, about 30 to 50 people that organizations consider
right. That's right.
political.
There's a number of people. I can name Kamal Siddiqui, Maroon Schultz, Amir Abu Jamal,
The great indigenous person, Native American Indian.
Leonard Peltier,
Leonard Peltier, yes.
Gilbert, yes. You know.
Right.
So those are persons that are still in there, but it's a number of others.
And you do work around that. You mentioned you served 17 years in about 3 federal prisons.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
And you do work around political prisoner issues.
That's right.
And issues having to do with the incarceration system.
Right.
Right.
Because I have to let people know that we are being held by persons who are mentally seriously damaged people. You know, they are former abused children, and they just really using us as really mother and father substitutes. So they grew up being tortured in torture chamber households. That's the household they grew up in. We grew up in loving households. These people grew up in torture chamber households for 18 or 20 years. And so these people have an enormous
You're talking about the handlers.
Yeah, I'm talking about
correctional.
the fascists and right-wing persons run the system. They have an enormous amount of hatred, and they want to hurt people and kill people. And so we cannot expect any improvement under their reign. You know, so we have to take matters in our own hands. We have to stop them from being in control, and we have to take control.
I wanted to ask you, Brother Tarik, when you went in 74 and came out in 91, 17 years approximately, you saw a level of political consciousness even inside the prisons. Whereas today, you would say a lot of that consciousness is missing with the people that are in there.
It may be missing because during the 60s and 70s, the American media was reporting on what was going on overseas. And a number of African countries were in revolt. They were conducting revolutions, and so
Southern Africa.
Yeah, and so every across the country, the black newspapers were covering these stories, and the regular state media was covering these stories, and that was like serving as instruments of education for the people, and that's how they so many people were so politicized, and so much activity was going on, and so much rebellion on the part of the people. But today, they have cut out all of that. You know, so in the jails today, they try not to let any of these newspapers from revolutionaries in. You know, so and the regular newspapers, they don't cover the story.
Did you continue any of your activities of organizing while in there?
Yeah, I did. I you know, because as a Black Panther,
you had study groups. And,
that's right. Yeah. And I was involved in an organization called ACS, African Cultural Society. That's the group I was involved in. And one of the things that we was trying to do was to re-Africanize Black people, because that's what should have happened when we were freed, 1865. Black people didn't know it, but they should have really re-Africanized themselves, and then they could have got back, they could have functioned more appropriately under dealing with the situation, you know, that they found themselves. So the African Cultural Society had as one of its goals the same thing as the Black Panthers, to re-Africanize people and to familiarize the students with socialist economics and how socialist economics is a better way to go for poor people.
And really importantly to sort of cultural people with their African roots.
Okay.
And a lot of the principles that can guide their lives.
Right.
And help center
Yeah,
their lives.
that's right.
Right?
Yeah.
So it was amazing that you were able to go through that system and to come out whole.
That's right.
And then for the last 30 years now, since 1991, you've been involved in, could you tell us some of the community activities and very important work around the prison and industrial system?
Right.
Some people like to refer it to the academic prison industrial system.
Okay,
You know so much of the,
So what I've been doing for the last 30 years is, firstly, familiarizing people with what this is about. And this is about black people and poor people being held hostage. And everything, the school system is designed to break the little children. This is how terrible this is. So really, a person would be better off if they had a Crip or the Bloods in charge rather than have, because the Crips and the Bloods, they just have the money. Whereas this administration, the Western governments, they break in little children, break them while they're early, and acquaint them with the stratified hierarchical system while they're young. And so they break them while they're young, and they won't rebel when they get old. This is what the school system is doing to little children. So we, first of all, are familiarizing with what we are dealing with. We are being held captured. We're being broken as little children. Our parents have been taught to raise the children wrong, and so that contributes to breaking them. And that's why we're in this situation.
what we want, we don't want. The Bloods and Crips are not particularly politically conscious.
But
so
they,
we don't
but
want,
they are better than these people here.
yeah, we don't want them. We don't want Blood and Crips principles the way that they operate, which is turning the guns on each other. You know about that.
No,
what we want is to build a beloved community. So we want people in that community, in all these communities across the country, to rise up and take charge of their communities.
But what I'm saying is that, comparatively speaking, in terms of if we're going to choose somebody, if we're dealing with choosing this administration, Joe Biden and the Crips, then we'd be better off with the Crips, because the Crips, they just making money and shooting each other. They not breaking little children. The government of the United States is breaking little children, and the Western school system is designed to break little children. So that's a terrible thing to do, to make them so that, to cripple them, so that when they get old, and 18 or 20 years old, when they should be fighting against being disrespected and fighting against living under these conditions, they won't do it. That's why they break them early. And so the Crips and the Bloods, they just shooting each other. They're not breaking little kids. That's a terrible thing.
All I'm saying is that kind of internecine warfare that the Crips and Bloods engage in, I mean, nobody survives from that.
Right,
they wind up ending in the system, and it's so destructive. We have other, great examples to go by of leaders that we've produced, an enormous amount of leaders. You yourself, Panthers, Dr. King, we have Malcolm, we have a whole set of people who were really put the community at the heart of everything, which is what we want, is it not?
Right. Well,
a kind of communitarian system, a kind of system in which we don't take on some of the beastlier aspects of, let's say, the way that people have been dealt with in these communities by the law, and having books thrown at them and giving people these long sentences for often minor offenses, misdemeanors.
No, and I'll tell you, I should have done 3 years for bank robbery and shooting the police, because they have a criteria. Once you go behind the wall, they apply a criteria to you, and the criteria said I should be out after 3 years, so that the races in the system, they did everything possible to parlay my sentence to 17 years.
That's right.
So they were the criminals. And I told them.
Not only that, Brother Tarik, you were a veteran. That should have been taken into consideration.
That's why I was down to 3 years.
You're a veteran.
Yeah, that's why I was down to 3 years.
You went there, put your life on the line.
So
for this country. So what we're happier is that you can now comb gray hair, as the great poet used to say. You've been through the belly of the beast. You've come out. You've been purified, and you're doing the work that's necessary.
Right.
All of the activities that you're involved with are community-centered.
And I'm letting people know that the political prisoners who are still locked up, they are locked up for fighting on behalf of the people. You know, they are doing good things for the people so that we won't have to continue to be disrespected. We won't have to continue to be living under these conditions where every time you turn the news on, they're either choking one of us or shooting one of us in the back and all that. We don't have to keep living like that.
Let me just ask you, Brother Tarik, as we come to a close here for for this edition of New Millennium Oral History Archive. Yesterday was the 25th May, was African Unity Day.
African Liberation Day.
African Liberation Day, known as African Liberation Day as well. And it was also the anniversary of the George Floyd assassination.
That's right.
As we go out off the air now, what would you want to say and tell people that they should be mindful of going forward in the struggle for a better and a just society that must be built?
Well, we got to throw away the present school system for one, and we got to introduce a system where the former students, they acquire knowledge and nobody don't feed knowledge to them. And then the parents, they got to raise their children differently. They got to use the modeling method for raising their children. If you want your child to brush his or her teeth, you let them see you brushing your teeth. You don't tell them nothing. You don't wake them up and say, listen, boy, you're 5 years old, you're going to do this. You don't do that, because you make a person who is going to hate you and hate me and want to beat me up and kill me instead of fighting against our oppressors. And that's why so many people choose not to fight against our oppressors, because our parents have raised them wrong, and then they put in the school system and beat down even further. So we have to change the school system. We have to change the way we raise our children, you know, and that would deprive these people of persons with the mindset who would want to let the system continue, you know. So that's what I would.
Well, Brother Tarik, I would say that what you just laid out, you've given us our marching orders, and we appreciate you taking the time, coming down here, and sharing your experience and the arc of your life and where it's taken you and the good works that you engage in. So, for all of us, we say thank you very much.
Thank you
for taking that time out and come down.
Right.
Of course, I've been to hundreds of things with you over the years, so it's good to do this. We had to be a little formal doing this, but wonderful work that you're doing, Brother Tarik.
Thank you. Thank you.